Good morning, everyone. Today we have collected some of the most knowledgeable historians in our show today to retell the stories of some of the most influential figures in the early 20th century. I'm the host, Ella, and I will welcome all of you to Mornings with the Loyal Lewis Disciples. Firstly, I will be talking about Aaron Rommel. Now, Aaron Rommel, being one of the most prominent World War II figures, can be described in one sentence: a victim of tyranny, as his fellow German soldiers would say. The life of Rommel began as an early admirer of Hitler and his teachings, especially after he got a hand-signed autograph of Mein Kampf of Hitler himself at a young age. Rommel's family traditionally rejected military interaction, but after Rommel could not get into college, he began his studies within military training. Jumping a couple of years later, he gained his first war experience serving as a lieutenant for German troops. He had gained respect from his fellow allies and allied forces, and eventually got promoted by Hitler to lead in the World War II alongside him. He frequently became injured and ill during the war, even becoming so aggressive to the point that he knowingly charged French soldiers with an empty weapon, and consequently lost tissue in his thigh as big as his wrist. As a result of his injuries and blood loss, he suffered ongoing fevers and stomach ailments. On the other hand, while ignoring Hitler's orders, he remained forgiving on the battlefield, valuing his soldiers' lives above all else. In contrast to Rommel's passion for war, he was not afraid to verbally support his allies, always commenting on their intelligence and strategies that he was attracted to. It is interesting to note that Rommel's empathy was only spared for his allies, which is often the sad psychology behind war participants. Hitler had successfully turned a once docile child into a war-hungry man. Secondly, I will tell the other side of the World War through Leo Major. Leo Major was quite the inspiring story behind his war efforts during World War II. His early life was simple and laid the groundwork for his military involvement later in life. His eventual story begins when he was deployed in the city of Zeeland, a rumored German military base. All was well until his best friend for decades met his demise within the flames of a firefight in the midst of scouting. At the same time, Major discovered that his town was deserted of any German occupational army. His best friend's death was for nothing. As Major saw the life of his friend seep into the night sky, Major was filled with a new rage. Major was on his way to the German army and that was responsible for taking his friend's life, heading to the military base filled with hundreds of sleeping soldiers. Without thinking, Major began his first strike on his first victim. One victim became 10. 10 victims became 50, and Major fought until he was the last man standing. He had quite literally defeated an entire German army single-handedly. After words got out that Major had accomplished the impossible, he was awarded almost every military award possible, except for the Victoria Cross, which was only denied to him because the general who gave it to him, a British general named Monty, was too incompetent to be handing out medals. He went down in history and is still celebrated as one of the greatest war brutes of all time. Thank you. Next up, I welcome the famous historian, my dearest friend from Harvard University, Rhiannon Bennett.
Good morning. I will begin by talking about James Doolittle. James Doolittle was an aviator during World War I and would enter World War II as both an aviator and a United States Army general. He came to fame due to his actions on April 18, 1942. Doolittle led an air raid or bombing mission on Tokyo. This was one of many air raids on Japan that Doolittle was a part of after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. This specific attack would become known as the Doolittle Raid. James Doolittle would be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor due to his leadership during the Doolittle Raid. He would continue leading air raids throughout the duration of World War II, specifically on Germany from 1944 to 1945. Secondly, I will talk about Maximilian Kolbe. Maximilian Kolbe was a conventual Franciscan friar that resided in Poland at a friary named Niepokalanów. When Germany invaded Poland at the start of World War II, Kolbe was arrested because the Nazis thought he was suspicious. He was eventually released 3 months later. After his release, he returned to the friary, and many Polish and Jewish people sought refuge there. Kolbe and the friars there would take in and care for 3,000 people, 1,500 of which were Jewish. Kolbe would also publish a newspaper called The Knight of the Immaculate, which harshly criticized Nazi ideals and activity. Kolbe was arrested due to its publication and sent to Auschwitz concentration camp. During his time there, 3 prisoners managed to escape, and 10 prisoners were chosen to starve to death as a message not to attempt to escape. Kolbe volunteered to take the place of one of the prisoners named Franciszek Gajaniczek. He would be one of the last of the 10 to die, but not from starvation. Instead, he and the few that were left died of lethal injection. Now I welcome my fellow historian, Alyssa.
Today I'm going to be talking about Lenny Bruce. Before he became a countercultural icon with his stand-up comedy and pushed the limits of free speech and entertainment, he was serving as a turret gunner aboard a Navy vessel in the Mediterranean. Bruce dropped out of high school at age 16 and enlisted shortly after the United States entered World War II. He spent the next several years working as a shell passer aboard the USS Brooklyn, a light cruiser that acted as a fire support vessel in North Africa and Italy during the Allied invasions of Sicily and Anzio. Bruce served honorably for most of the war, but by 1945 he had grown tired of life at sea, and he eventually secured an early discharge after he falsely claimed to have homosexual desires for his fellow sailors. Bruce got his start in stand-up shortly after returning stateside, and later won widespread acclaim and frequent arrests on obscenity charges for his satirical and profanity-laced stage performances. I'd like to introduce a fellow historian, Dawson Cluda.
So first, I'm going to talk about Jack Churchill. He was a British Army officer who led a group of commandos across Europe from Norway to Italy all the way to Yugoslavia. He was known as Mad Jack or Fighting Jack for the way he charged into battle playing his bagpipes, holding a sword in his other hand. He would also carry a longbow, and he would go down as the last person to get a kill with a longbow in war. Around his waist, he would carry 2 knives and a small revolver and a lot of grenades. He was known for charging into battle with his bagpipes while throwing grenades at enemy ditches or just really anything he saw. His sword specifically was a Scottish claybag sword that he decided to use to fight. His motto was, "Any officer who goes into action without a sword is improperly dressed." Second, I'll be talking about Witold Pilecki. He was a Polish World War II cavalry officer and resistance leader. In 1939, Pilecki was called up to defend Poland against the Nazi invasions. Following these defeats, Pilecki made his way to fight in an underground Polish resistance against the Nazis. He created a mission to report to the Allies the crimes the Nazis were committing and to create an army for uprising. So he voluntarily went to Auschwitz in September 19th, 1940. Throughout the time he was there, he would send various secret messages through various code names to the Allies about the crimes the Nazis were committing and what was going on in these camps. He would write about what he saw and what he endured. He went through it all. And on April 27th, 1943, he would escape Auschwitz and go back to England to write about what he endured throughout those times and what he witnessed.